right, new day, new shirt, new haircut, and new tutorial today. So in this video, we're going to be looking at tabs and subtabs in Doctave. So tabs let you structure your documentation into discrete sections. In this particular example project, we have two tabs, one for documentation and one for our API reference. And in this video, we're going to look at what it takes to actually add a new tab and also configure subtabs as well. So let's dive into it. I'm going to open up the doctave.yaml, which is the main configuration file for this project. And if we go to the bottom over here, we get to this tabs section. And here is where the tabs are configured. And in this one, we already have two tabs. We have the documentation tab and the API reference tab. And then we also have to say, hey, the documentation tab contains everything under the slash or the root of the project. And then the API reference contains everything under the /API directory. Now, you always have to have one tab that matches the root path. Now, next, let's take a look at adding a new tab to this project. I'm going to imagine that in our case, we have some SDKs for our API that we want to document. So let's add a tab for our SDKs. I'm going to create a new item in this list and say, hey, I'm going to put everything into this tab under the /SDK path. And I'm going to give it a label of SDKs. Now I'm going to hit save and a few things are going to happen in Doctave Studio. There we go. So first of all, as expected, we get the SDKs tab here on the left, but we also get these two issues in Doctave Studio. So let's take a look at what these are actually about. Now, the first thing we can see is that there's two errors. The first one being we have a missing root README for the tab SDKs. Now this actually makes a lot of sense because if we go to this SDKs tab, we just get a 404. We actually haven't added any content here. And it's telling us we need to add a file to this particular location to fix this problem. Doctave prevents you from having broken links in your project. So that's what it's doing here. The next thing is that it's warning about this missing navigation.yaml for this tab. Also makes sense. Each tab gets its own navigation structure on the left, and we haven't added one yet for this SDKs tab. So let's fix both of these problems. I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code here, and I'm going to create a SDK directory here. There we go. And next, let's create that readme.md. And I'm going to hit enter here. And a couple things happen. First of all, we get this completely blank page and our issues have decreased by 1. The readme issue has been removed. What's happened here is that we created the file, but there's nothing in it yet. So let's add some placeholder content here. Let's say Nebularis SDKs. And say, I am a pretty placeholder. And hit save. There we go. So now we've created this tab and we've added the first landing page to it. Now, next, let's go to the navigation.yaml. We can do that as well in the SDK directory. I'm just going to add a new file called navigation.yaml and hit enter. Now, immediately, Doctave Studio removes the issue, but nothing actually happened yet, and that's because we haven't actually added any content into the navigation.yaml. So let's fix that. And I'm just going to skip a few steps and input some placeholder navigation structures here. There we go. So now we have just a basic navigation structure. Now, great. We actually have now just configured our tab for us. We have a landing page for it, and you can add any content you want under the SDKs directory, and it will show up inside the SDKs tab. Now, next, let's take a look at subtabs. I'm going to go back to the doctave.yaml here. Subtabs are essentially a level of hierarchy underneath tabs. So tabs give you these structures here at the top left, but you can add subtabs underneath each tab. Now, in our example, let's say we wanted to add subtabs for every language that we have an SDK for. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this subtabs field, and I'm just going to say, yes, the first one is going to be for Python. So we're going to say, hey, under SDK/Python is going to be where we have our Python SDK content, and we're going to give it a label of Python. Hit save, and now we get our first subtab here. And I'm going to do the same thing for a couple other languages. Let's say we want JavaScript because it's so popular. JavaScript. And I'm also going to do it for Elixir because we're big fans of Elixir here at Doctave. And I'm going to hit save. And there we go. We have our 3 subtabs. And these look a little bit barren right now. So I'm going to show you a cool trick to make these a bit more distinguished from regular links here. We can actually add icons to these subtabs. Let me show you how to do that. So Doctave comes built in with 2 icon sets. One is the Devicon set and one is the Lucid set. And the Devicon set is very useful for programming languages. It essentially has most programming languages and programming frameworks and their logos supported. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to add the Python logo for this subtab. And to do that, I'm going to add the icon field. And I'm going to say I want to use the Devicon set. Actually, is it Devicon or Devicon? I'm not sure. And then I'm going to say the name of the icon is going to be just Python, and hit save. And there we go. We get an icon for Python here. I'm going to repeat the same thing for JavaScript and Elixir. And hit save. And there we go. Now we have these nicely formatted subtabs with these nice icons. But while we've been doing this, Doctave Studio has started complaining again and saying, hey, we're missing these root readmes and missing navigation.yamls. And the same rules apply to subtabs as tabs. So you need to have a root readme for each subtab, and you need to also have a navigation.yaml for each subtab. So let's fix this just for one of them as an example. Let's take a look at this Python one, for example. So if I click on this Python subtab, we get nothing because it's just a 404. So let's go back to the SDKs page and create a Python directory underneath the SDK directory. So that's going to match the path that we added for our subtab. Let's hit enter. Nothing happens yet. Let's add a readme.md here. Once we do that, our issues count has decreased by 1. And I'm just going to add Python SDK. Let's maybe Nebularis Python SDK as an example here. Hit save. And also let's fix the navigation.yaml issue as well. So if I now add navigation.yaml over here and just add some basic content here. There we go. Just some basic placeholder content for the Python SDK navigation. And now if we go to the Python subtab, well, we see the content that we added into the readme.md for this subtab. And we also see that this navigation.yaml for the subtab is active here on the left. So that's going to be it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Happy documenting.